Aston and Birmingham University, and at Birmingham University he got his MA and his BA. And while he was in school, he ran in the same circles as W.H. Auden and Louis MacNeice, but I looked into it and he wasn't, I guess, really officially part of the Auden circle, but he was associated with those same people who were in that group, and his poetry was kind of the same style. So he wasn't officially part of their group, but he was, I guess, like, friends with them. So he worked as a teacher, as a journalist, and a freelance writer. He spoke several languages. I think he taught himself Greek, which I think is really cool because, you know, it's not an easy language. In World War II, he was drafted into the Army in 1941. He worked for them doing naval intelligence, and as a translator, they had him translating Japanese, even though he didn't really speak it. He spoke, I think, 3 or 4 languages. He was very fluent in several languages, but he did not enjoy Japanese. He did not like it. After the war was over, like a lot of other authors, he started working for BBC. I feel like they all kind of got together and worked for BBC after the war was over. And here he contributed both poems, plays, criticisms on other works, stuff like that. He did a lot of different stuff. He had different radio pieces that he did. While he was working there, his most well-known series was called Hilda Tablet, and it was released in 1950. And it was originally based on a poet, I forget his name, but they ended up shifting the focus to another character because everyone liked her more. So I thought that was kind of funny. A Map of Verona in 1946 was his only published anthology, like his only published collection. And Lessons of War is a series of poems that kind of give detail to what it was like in British army camps during World War II. There's 2 of his poems in our packet. Naming of Parts is probably his more famous work. And it has 2 narrators, an older instructor and a younger soldier, and then also Judging Distances is kind of the same way. And we're going to go over Judging Distances because I like that one better. But I know Naming of Parts is his more famous one. So, the importance of his work, he offered a dose of humor and kind of sarcasm in his poems in the midst of a very violent war, which I really liked. I thought that was a cool way to approach it. A lot of these poems are very dark and serious, and his was kind of like joking, and I really liked that. And so it kind of offered his readers a look at what it was like in the basic training and the army camps during this time in England. And some of his poems displayed basically 2 narrators or a conversation sort of taking place in his poetry. And a lot of times it's like an older, more experienced soldier and then, I guess, more of a newcomer who's learning the ropes. Something funny that I found on him is he wasn't very well known. He was often confused with this other guy. Sir Herbert Reed is on the left. This guy right here is Sir Herbert Reed, and this is Henry Reed. And people would get them mixed up a lot. Herbert was an art historian, and so they had nothing in common really with their works, but people would still get them confused. And so to deal with this, Henry Reed named one of his characters Herbert Reeve. It was kind of like a joke, kind of like, aha, like, no one knows our name. It was to be funny, and I thought that was clever of him. But I think they look a lot alike. They're very similar, but they're very different people, so. Okay, so we're going to go over Judging Distances, and I can read it for you guys. I'm sorry I talk really fast. I'll try and slow down. So, Judging Distances. Not only how far away, but the way that you say it is very important. Perhaps you may never get the knack of judging its distance, but at least you know how to report on a landscape. The central sector, the right of arc, and that which we had last Tuesday, and at least you know that maps are of time, not place, so far as the army happens to be concerned. The reason being is one which need not delay us. Again, you know that there are 3 kinds of tree, 3 only, the fir and the poplar, and those which have bushy tops too, and lastly, that things only seem to be things. A barn is not called a barn, to put it more plainly, or a field in the distance, where sheep may be safely grazing. You must never be oversure. You must say, when reporting, at 5 o'clock and the central sector is a dozen of what appear to be animals. Whatever you do, don't call the bleaters sheep. I am sure that's quite clear, and suppose, for the sake of example, the one at the end, asleep, endeavors to tell us what he sees over there to the west, and how far away. After first having come to attention, there to the west, on the fields of summer and sun and the shadows, bestow vestments of purple and gold. The still white dwellings are like a mirage in the heat, and under the swaying elms a man and a woman lie gently together, which is perhaps only to say that there is a row of houses to the left of the ark, and that under some poplars a pair of what appears to be humans appear to be loving. Well, that for an answer is what we might rightly call moderately satisfactory only. The reason being is that two things have been omitted, and those are important. The human beings now, in what direction are they, and how far away would you say? And do not forget, there may be dead ground in between. There may be dead ground in between, and I may not have got the knack of judging a distance. I will only venture a guess that perhaps between me and the apparent lovers, who incidentally appear by now to have finished, at 7 o'clock from the houses, is roughly a distance of about 1 year and a half. So some thoughts, there's some questions y'all can think about it. So what do you think about this poem? It's a little bit different from some of the others.
More humor than I thought.
Yeah, it's a little funny, which I really like about him. I thought he was funny, and I think that's a good way to approach such a dark time. But that's just me. I like that he was funny. Many of Reed's poems have alternating narrators and a sarcastic tone. Do you see any of these elements in Judging Distances? Or not really?
Well, so you have the instructor who's talking about the precise terminology, and what is the guy who apparently was sleeping during the talk? What does he see? What does he see in the poem? What is he looking at?
Army camp?
Well, I mean, I think he sees a couple going at it, right? You know, and he's like, oh, well, you have used the incorrect terminology. What is the distance between you and me? And he's like, about 1.5 years. You know, it's like probably that's how long he's been in the Army, been away from, whatever, yeah. And appear to be humans. And the instructor totally misses the irony in what he's saying. He's being really sarcastic. And it's, I don't know. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
I really like
that was basically what I was going to say anyway, is that he was not paying attention at all to what the guy was trying to tell him. He was like off in his own world, which I thought was kind of funny. And then he was also, Reed was kind of associated with Auden and McNeice. Do you see any similarities in their writings, or not really so much?
I don't.
Yeah, I thought they all had very different, like, distinct ways of writing, but I didn't know if anyone else saw anything that I didn't, so. But yeah, I really like his poetry, and he has there's another one in the packet. Naming of Parts is also a poem by him, and it's one of his really well-known ones. It's really good.
This is probably the second most famous poem to come out of World War II.
The first one was September 39?
Well, I would say it was the Terrible Rain.
Okay.
The Terrible Rain that Prince will really look at yesterday.
Yeah, and I really like this one as well. I know it was a really famous one, but I really like Judging Distances. So.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's pretty much it. So in conclusion, just to summarize, Henry Reed was not incredibly well known. He did have a couple of famous poems, but his pieces offered a very unique spin on the war, and just he was associated, but not an official member, of the Auden Circle. That's a picture of some British planes. That's it.
All right, thank you. All right. Yeah, when he died, it was, author of Naming of Parts dies. I mean, that was it. Let's go ahead and we'll do the daily writing in a minute. But let's just go ahead and look at Naming of Parts, which
on the next page after Judging Distances.
Yeah, it's on the handwritten 17 there as well. They're all different aspects to war, but maybe you just have to have been there, and I don't know if it was true for officers. Mike will have to tell me, but for enlisted, there's just a lot of boredom. I mean, sitting around waiting, being told stuff, and the training you get and the lectures you get are just in this dull monotone kind of thing, and you're just fighting to stay awake, and so, and I think the reason that so many people I like Auden, I like McNeese, but they're full of all these literary allusions. Yes, this is what Sophocles thought, and this intellectual world weariness. What does it ever mean? And this guy's captures the point of view of probably a 20-year-old kid, ripped away from home, having supposed to go to war, but he's sitting through class after class after class, and he thinks he's going to die of boredom. And just capturing what things like basic training were like. And I had this exact same talk, 30, 40 years later, as well, when I was going, getting my rifle training as well. Today we have naming of parts. Just think of the sergeant who loves to have his own voice. Yesterday we had daily cleaning, and tomorrow morning we shall have what to do after firing. But today we have naming of parts. And then the point of view of the distracted young man. Japonica gleams, glistens like coral all over the neighboring gardens. And today we have naming of parts. So he's aware of the flowers and the nature. Mm-hmm. So he's kind of looking out the window. But the other sort of the trick or the main conceit of the poem is the poem's full of sexual allusions. Because, one of the metaphors for, at least the male's, sexual organs is rifles, a gun, things like that as well. And for female parts, it's often flowers. So he's sitting there looking at the flowers, listening to the talk on guns, and he's not thinking about combat. Let's do it that way. This is the lower swivel, and this is the upper sling swivel, which you will use when you are given your slings. And this is the piling swivel, which in your case you have not got. And again, we recognize the pattern and the stuff. And that's the other thing. Maybe you just have to have been through the training, but they'll tell you, oh, this is, but you don't have this part, you don't have this part, you don't have this part. But if you had it, this is what it would look like. And you're like, well, what do we have? What am I learning kind of thing as well. The branches hold in the garden's eloquent gestures, which in our case, we have not got. This is the safety catch, which is always released with an easy flick of the thumb. And please do not let me see anyone use his fingers. You do quite easy if you have any strength in your thumb. The blossoms are fragile and motionless, never letting anyone see any of them use their finger. And if you're like, is that a dirty sexual pun? Yeah, it is. So I just won't go any further than that. And this you can see is the bolt. The purpose of the bolt is to open the breech as you see. We can slide it rapidly back and forth. And somebody's sitting there going like this in front of a class, and a guy's looking, you kind of get what's going on. Anyway, easing the spring, and rapidly backing forth, the bees are assaulting and fumbling the flowers. They call it easing the spring. And, well, release of tension on the spring. Anyway, they call it easing the spring. It is perfectly easy if you have any strength in your thumb, like the bolt and the breech and the cocking piece and the point of balance, which in our case we have not got, and the almond blossom silent in all the gardens and the bees going backwards and forwards. For today we have naming of parts. And you kind of get it. I said it. I don't know that it's puerile humor, but it's earthy humor, certainly. And, this is what some 18, 19-year-old guys think about, And that's one of the reasons that he's, having been young, having been in the service, having been stuck in lectures on weaponry on summer days, after not having seen a girl for 12 weeks or something like that. Yeah, it sort of rings true to me. But anyway, I'll leave it at that. Let's do our daily writing.